Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Sarah Jane Comrie? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing you by this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Sarah Jane Comrie was born sometime around 1989 and grew up in San Diego, California. She graduated with a bachelor's degree from Brigham Young University in 2011, and 4 years later earned a master's degree from Cornell. She went on to work as a physician assistant at Bellevue Hospital in New York City. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. On May 12, 2023, Sarah was captured in a 90-second video that became extremely popular on social media. The video takes place in Manhattan at a Citi bike rental station at 1st Avenue and East 30th Street. It features an incident between Sarah and several young black men. It's clear the recording started after the incident began. Sarah, who was 6 months pregnant, can be seen in her hospital scrubs straddling a rental bike. A young black man appears to be struggling to get control over the same bike. He is holding it near the handlebars with one hand. It was not a violent confrontation, rather more like neither one of them was willing to move and relinquish control of the bike. Sarah started yelling things like, "Help me, please help me," as the young man said, "This is not your bike." Sarah paused for a moment before continuing to yell for help. She told the young man to get off her. It appeared as though she took the phone from the young man before quickly giving it back. She then accused the man of hurting her fetus. The young man claims that he was not touching her, rather she was putting her stomach against his hand. Sarah continued to yell for help and started crying, or pretending to cry, it's not clear. She and the young man argued as bystanders closed in to investigate. Some of the young men started explaining their position to the bystanders, arguing that the bike in question was rented by their friend. Toward the end of the video, Sarah moved away from the bike and appeared to be getting ready to rent another one. One of the men can be heard suggesting that Sarah's baby was going to be born with an intellectual disability, except he used a slur in his statement. The police never received a 911 call about the incident. Nobody knows for certain what happened in the situation. Here is Sarah's side of the story. On May 12, 2023, Sarah worked a 12-and-a-half-hour shift at Bellevue Hospital. Due to a medical condition related to her pregnancy, she had been ordered by her physician to use an e-bike rather than ride a regular bicycle. Using the Citi Bike app, Sarah discovered that several e-bikes were available for free just a few blocks from the hospital. She took a regular bicycle and rode it to the e-bike docking station with the intention of switching to an e-bike. When she arrived, she asked a young man who was leaning on one of the bikes if the bike was taken. He responded yes. There was a bike next to the young man. No one was on this bike, and no one was touching it. Sarah straddled this bike, again the one next to the one the young man was touching, and used her phone to scan the QR code. According to Sarah's receipt, she scanned the e-bike at 7:24 p.m. The bike released from the docking station, and she put her phone away. At this point, Sarah heard someone say, "Hey, that's my bike." When she looked up, she saw a group of teenagers surrounding her, repeating that the bike she was on belonged to them. Sarah explained to them that she had just rented it. One of the young men told her to get off the bike as the others started hassling her and cursing at her. Several of the young men put their hands on the bike and pushed it into the docking station. This locked the bike back into the docking station and meant that the bike was now available to rent again. One of the young men stopped Sarah from scanning the bike again and used his own cell phone to scan the bike. Essentially, Sarah indicated that the young men tried to steal the bike from her. She ended up renting another bike, which had been returned during the argument. The identities of the young men have not been confirmed, although one of the men and his mother talked to the digital media platform News One The young man was identified only by the name Michael. Here is Michael's side of the story. 17-year-old Michael and 4 of his acquaintances had been using Citi bikes on May 12, 2023. They had ridden from the Bronx to Harlem and then made their way to the Lower East Side of Manhattan. The rate for the rental bikes increases after 45 minutes of usage. Therefore, the teenagers would put the bikes back into a docking station, wait a few minutes to reset the clock, and then rent them again. This is what they did in Manhattan. They put their bikes into the docking station at 7:19 p.m. As they were waiting to rent the bikes again, Michael's friends were sitting on the bikes they intended to rent, and Michael was standing next to the one he intended to rent. Sarah approached and asked 2 different acquaintances of Michael if she could take the bike they were on. They both refused. Sarah then asked Michael. He told her that he needed the bike to get home to the Bronx. Michael claimed that Sarah then tried to take the bike from him, and this is when the video recording started. Immediately after the incident, Sarah was vilified in the media and labeled Citi Bike Karen. People accused her of being racist. As evidence was released, the tide shifted, and now many people view the teenagers as being in the wrong, like they were members of some no-emission e-biker gang. The incident has led to a good deal of controversy and a discussion about race and the right to call for assistance during confrontations. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. According to Michael's receipts, he rode the same bike from 5:53 p.m. to 10:12 p.m. on the day of the incident. Michael was using the same bike for more than 45 minutes, yet he wanted to keep riding it at a discounted rate, the rate that was available when the rental was less than 45 minutes. It appears as though Michael and his friends were trying to beat the system. Returning a bike to the docking station would reset the clock. The problem is, when a bike is at the docking station, it shows up as available to anyone who wants to rent it. This is probably why the Citi Bike app showed several available bikes in the area when Sarah checked. It was displaying all the bikes for which the teenagers were waiting. It sounds like the teenagers were trying to retain possession of the bikes during the time period when the bikes were available to anyone by standing on or standing near the bikes, like they were trying to maintain possession of bikes to which they were not entitled. If one of them lost a bike to someone else, the group would be in trouble because that member would no longer have transportation. Clearly, the teenagers were riding together, probably just for fun. There is no mention of them conducting any business in the area. Item number 2. The story that Michael provided about the argument with Sarah doesn't match the available evidence. According to his receipt, he rented the bike that was in dispute at 7:25 p.m. This is the same bike that he had been riding earlier and the one he would continue riding for several hours after this. Sarah rented that same bike at 7:24 p.m., just 1 minute earlier. If Sarah was trying to take the bike from Michael, as he stated, then why wasn't she successful? She scanned it before he did. The bike was hers. Why didn't she just ride away from the scene? Why would Sarah have remained there and engaged in a confrontation, unless the teenagers were causing the confrontation? How did the bike get back into the docking station in order for Michael to rent it at 7:25 p.m. if Sarah rented it at 7:24 p.m.? This is the question that Michael cannot seem to answer. He does not appear to have an explanation for Sarah's receipt. That receipt is devastating to his argument. It doesn't make any sense that Sarah would rent the bike and then immediately return it. The only story that makes sense is Sarah's version of events. She rented the bike at 7:24 p.m. and the teenagers pushed it back into the docking station so that Michael could quickly rent it with his phone. Item number 3. Sarah's argument is that no one was touching the e-bike that she originally rented. It stands to reason that she was telling the truth. When the video starts, Sarah can be seen straddling that e-bike. She was already on it, and of course, from her receipt, it's clear that she had rented it. Another young man, presumably Michael, can be seen with his hand on the bike. It appeared as though he was trying to obscure the QR code. He was trying to prevent Sarah from scanning it. If Michael was sitting on the bike when Sarah arrived, how did Sarah end up sitting on the bike? It's clear that she didn't push Michael off. It is also unlikely that Sarah took a bike that Michael was touching at the time. It sounds like Michael left the bike unattended. Item number 4, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Michael and his friends were trying to beat the system so they could ride around New York City for fun. When they stopped a few blocks away from Bellevue Hospital to reset the clocks on the bikes, Michael became lazy and drifted away from the bike he had been using. Sarah scanned the QR code on that bike, thereby renting it. The bike was hers at the moment. Michael and his friends did not want Michael to be separated from the group, therefore they responded by using verbal aggression in order to regain possession of the bike. They knew that they were in the wrong, yet they started recording, hoping that they could intimidate Sarah into abandoning the bike. They ended up hurting themselves by recording their own hostile behavior. Sarah was in a tough position at this point. She was legitimately afraid for her safety because she was surrounded by a group of young men who were harassing her. They were implying that she had done something wrong and trying to intimidate her by video recording the confrontation that they caused. Sarah wanted to be left alone and called for help. Her mannerisms on the video seemed insincere to some people. When she cried or attempted to cry, this only made Sarah appear more disingenuous. These circumstances led to her being labeled Citi Bike Karen. People thought that perhaps her behavior was racially motivated and she was endangering black men by calling for assistance. I think the reality of the situation is that Sarah was a victim of hostile behavior perpetrated by individuals who were trying to obtain a bike that she had rented. One of the teenagers used a slur for people with intellectual disabilities, demonstrating that he was not afraid. Another comment accused Sarah of not really crying. Why would this be important to say if the teenagers were really victims? They were not acting like victims. They were acting like aggressors. I don't believe for a second that they felt as though they were in danger from anyone. Ironically, the teenagers were the ones acting like Karens. They were demonstrating a sense of entitlement and falsely accusing someone. Item number 5. There have been several incidents on social media which involve concerns about a white person calling the police or calling for help in general when dealing with a black person. The idea is that the white person is endangering the black person. Sometimes I think this is true. If a person calls the police with a frivolous complaint, they could be making the situation more dangerous. The police don't have a great reputation for dealing with black people in a civil and safe manner. At the same time, I'm worried about this trend of labeling a white person as a Karen simply based on calling for help in a situation that involves black people. Again, I think that Sarah was fully justified in requesting assistance based on the circumstances she was dealing with. Sarah was surrounded by young men who were harassing her. People are allowed to call for help when they have a reason to believe they are in danger. Sarah never exaggerated her situation. She didn't say, "Help, I'm being stabbed," or "Help, I'm being robbed." She simply said, "Please help me." Sarah wanted to attract attention to what was going on because she was being harassed. The young men could have walked away. Sarah was not holding on to them. She wasn't keeping them there. I think it demonstrates incredibly poor judgment on the part of the teenagers that they remained there and created a video of their own bad behavior. They demonstrated a lack of empathy and a lack of insight. I think it's possible that they were banking on the Karen trend, hoping to be perceived as victims. It's like they were daring people to accuse them. Now moving to my final thoughts. The trend of accusing people of being Karens started because of legitimate concerns about racism. Unfortunately, the trend has transformed into something nefarious. It is creating an environment which discourages people from calling for help when the alleged offenders are black. Sarah was in an impossible situation. She may have been balancing two fears simultaneously: her fear of the teenagers trying to take her bike and the fear of being misjudged. Years ago, potential victims used to worry only about their safety. Now they must additionally worry about social media, a rush to judgment, and being falsely accused of racism. Those are my thoughts in the case of Sarah Jane Comrie. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.